Dr. Tom Roselle, author of Ageless Health, Health is a Do-It-Yourself Program. My book, now also available in audio version, is a step-by-step program of how to take control of your health and wellness without drugs or needless surgery. You have the capacity to change your health and level of well-being. Take control of your health today and order Health is a Do-It-Yourself Program.
For more information and to order, please visit agelesshealthbook.com. That's agelesshealthbook.com.
At the Roselle Center for Healing, we care about your health and want to help you take your health in a new direction, far from drugs and surgery. Knowledge is the key to optimal wellness and control of your health. We offer free health education on chronic health conditions and natural integrative medicine treatments. Register for free today.
Attend Long-Term Effects of Head Trauma and Concussions on Wednesday, October 9th at 6 p.m. Space is limited, so register today. Call 703-698-7117 or visit rosellcare.com.
Are you dental phobic? Do you neglect your dental health because of fear and anxiety? A beautiful smile begins with exceptional dental care, and you can trust in the expertise of Soft Touch Dental Care and Dr. Michael Chung. Soft Touch Dental Care is unlike any dentist office you'll ever experience. Their warm and welcoming environment is designed to soothe fears and anxiety the moment you arrive, and they're especially pleased to pamper their honored guest patients. Dr. Michael Chung is a professional and leading expert in all areas of comprehensive dentistry, including cosmetic, sedation, neuromuscular, TMJ, and implant dentistry. Offering state-of-the-art technology, Dr. Chung can give you the smile of your dreams. Arrange for a complimentary consultation today with Dr. Michael Chung and experience the expertise that makes Dr. Michael Chung so unique. Call 703-319-6990. That's 703-319-6990. Or visit bestinsmile.com. That's bestinsmile.com.
Breast cancer is a major health risk to all women. It can silently grow uninterrupted for years. The Thermography Centers of Fairfax reminds all women to conduct monthly and annual breast exams. Consider a thermography scan from the Thermography Centers as an adjunct to your routine breast exams. Digital infrared thermal imaging is safe and non-invasive. For more information and to schedule an appointment, call 703-520-7591 or visit thermographycenters.com.
This is Dr. Tom Roselle. After 43 years of practice and over 1 million patient visits, the Roselle Center for Healing knows what works and knows how you can take control of your health and wellness. My team of doctors practice 21st century integrative medicine. Whether you suffer from chronic pain and fatigue, allergies or headaches, we can help. Take charge of your health before it's too late. Make an appointment today. Call 703-698-7117 or visit online at rosellcare.com. That's rosellcare.com.
The information provided on Dr. Tom Roselle Live by Dr. Tom Roselle, D.C., interview guests, show co-hosts, or substitute hosts is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. It is for general information purposes only. Information from this broadcast should not replace the appropriate consultation and examination process by a licensed physician. Always consult your own physician prior to changing any current medical directive or prescription.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ageless Health Livestream with yours truly, Dr. Tom. And got a great program for you. It's going to kind of be a continuation of what we just left off on WMAL 105.9. We're talking about your belly roll, your fat. And yeah, that's, it's the nice word is obesity. But let's call it what it is. It's like we've all gotten too damn fat, right, over time. But we're talking about hormonal fat and what happens with that accumulation at times goes on. Here's what I want you to know, that we kind of finger pointed towards, perimenopause, menopause, andropause for guys and so forth. Excuse me, but that hormonal fat can come as a result of a lot of different reasons. And one of the major reasons is simply the fact that we're eating things that we shouldn't eat that causes a shift in our metabolic system. We talk about thyroid hormone. We talk about the fight-flight cortisol hormone. It's my cortisol weight. It's my cortisol fat. All those things are true to a point. But it also has a lot to do with the makeup and the modification of the foods. It has to do with lifestyle. We don't get off our butts. We don't walk around. And what we're seeing today is more and more people who are overweight, people who, normally their metabolic background wouldn't suggest that that was true. But because of what they put in their bodies, the fast-acting carbohydrates is what they live on. Think about how many of you shop in the central portion of your grocery stores when you go shopping instead of the perimeter. The perimeter meaning your live foods, your vegetables and your fruits and your meats and things of that nature. No, we go to the inside. We do all the box stuff, correct? And we expect to be able to sustain ourselves and live. How many of us catch as catch can? And what I mean by that, how many of us go to the drive-ins, right? And we pick up something at Mickey D's or Wendy's or whatever it is, and we think that's going to nourish us. Remember that when you get a ground hamburger that's not free-range, organic, grass-fed, and you know specifically where it's coming from, that hamburger could be made up of hundreds of different farm areas and different cattle with all kinds of different exposures, and that's what you're putting into your body. And body says, not so much. We got a problem here. How about the fried French fries? Those are trans fats, straight up across the board. They're trans fats, people. And we know that trans fats will kill you by causing all kinds of deposition of these free radical damaging things that the body protects by shoving fat into it. Now, in the first part of the program on WMAL, I talked about the accumulation of fat due to several things, right? We take lifestyle. Nobody walks anymore. I mean, we park our car as close to the building as we can and we get rock star parking. And then what do? Then we take the elevator up 2 floors or 3 floors or 4 floors. And worse yet, we take the elevator down and we get back in our car. We go home, we park in the garage. We get out of the garage, we go back in. Sound familiar? That's what we do. And then we wonder why, one, we don't have the energy. Number two, that we have a jiggle and jarring effect in our body because there's no muscle mass there. But as we get into hormone patterns of accumulation of fat, I want you to remember these terms. I want you to remember things like adrenal corticostimulating hormone, thyroid hormone. I want you to think about growth hormone. I want you to think about progesterone and estrogens and testosterones and so forth. Now, all those things mean something, but particularly if they're unbalanced. We talked about WMAL, we talked about leptin. Leptin is that I want to eat hormone. It suppresses that. If you have fat in your body, there should be a loop that says, okay, you've had enough, and now you're bringing it down. And the more fat that you have, the better that loop is in suppression. But then we go, well, I'm just going to eat a little bit. So what do you eat? Pasta. You're going to eat a little bit of what? White rice. You're going to eat a little bit of what? Bread and a sandwich. I didn't have much. I had a half a sandwich. Well, that half a sandwich now is made up of bread and what? Some deli meat, which is a trans fat. And now we have a double whammy. And so we talked about that a little bit. But I want to talk about the other responsible partners, if you will, when it comes to this stuff. So we're talking about leptins. We're going to talk about something called ghrelin. Ghrelin is the opposite situation. As I'm hungry, folks, feed me type of thing. And then we're going to talk about the inflammatory factors and the risk factors that make all this up. So we're going to try to work that all in today. But on November the 16th, coming up, we're in October. This is crazy. This year's gone by so fast. And the next in-house program at the Roselle Center for Healing in Fairfax, guess what? We're going to know who the president is. And that stress, one way or the other, depending on the platform that you're on, is going to make you maybe fatter than you are now or happier, and the stuff will start burning off. I don't know. Maybe you're going to go out and say, I'm going to celebrate with an 18-inch pizza, and I'm going to eat the whole damn thing myself. Or you're going to say that, I want to drown my sorrows in a case of beer. Whatever your journey is and your poison is, please modify it dramatically. It's not worth it, but we're going to leave that there. We're not going to get into politics today. And don't ask me, what my feelings are, because all I worry about is you. But the alcohol, the trans fat, the sedentary lifestyle, all of those things are accumulations and they trigger hormonal reactions. Now, remember, the series that we're doing right now, we're going to be talking about your hormones. We're going to talk about why you go into your personal summers, ladies and guys too, why you get grouchy, why you get that beer belly around you. You don't even drink beer, but you get fat. And why does that happen? Why are we not feeling as good as we should feel it? Those are triggered by this. But today we're going to talk about what? We're going to talk about your belly, that paid for thing that you have around your stomach that you can grab both hands and you can shake it and it bounces all over the place. That's the fat we're talking about. That's the one that says we got something that we have to do something about. And that's usually a hormonal play. So why would that occur? Let's talk about the stress hormone to begin with. Stress hormone is called cortisol, and there's a cortisone as well. Cortisol weight. That's what we like to finger point to and say, that's what's really making me fat because I'm stressed out all the time. Well, for some people, when they're stressed out, they get thin. They get toothpick thin. And, some people, when they're stressed out, what happens to them? They start accumulating this very loose stuff. Now, to understand why that happens, you have to understand the organ system that's involved in stress reduction and stress drive. What's that? That's your adrenal glands. Those are your small little ductless glands that sit on top of the kidneys. And they squeeze their hormone into the blood supply very much like a sponge pushing out the water that's in it and so forth. When you need it, it's supposed to be stimulated. What stimulates it? So there's this whole pattern, it's called, and you've heard me mention it multiple times now, HPA axis, hypothalamus, little place in your brain, pituitary, another place in your brain, and what? The adrenal glands. Excuse me. The adrenal system is the triggering mechanism to protect you. It has an outer shell and it has an inner shell that we call the medulla. Now they do different things, but the outer shell produces something called cortisol. And you have this cortisol reaction. Your cortisol, your stress hormone, should be the highest in the morning. And then it begins to drop a little bit naturally over the day until at nighttime, when it's not at a high level, you feel like you want to go to sleep. Now, a lot of you wake up in the middle of the night, and you do it all the time, right? You go to sleep, you're out for a couple hours, and then you're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed no matter what you do, and you're wide awake. Why is that? What's doing that? That's called cortisol spike. Now, the reason it's spiking is your body then says, I need food. And it needs the right type of food, but the problem is that we're not feeding it correctly. So in most situations, and there's ways of testing that when a patient comes in, because of that outer shell that's producing that cortisol is not working the way it's supposed to, there's other things that it's not producing, like other steroids. They're called mineral corticoids. Those keep joint spaces solid. They keep inflammation down that's being irritated. So cortisol surge will wake you up. But the reason it's doing that is because it's not getting enough of the right food. What is that? It's called protein. Protein, the stuff that none of us like to eat. We'd rather have a bag of chips, or we'd rather have, I'm just going to have a piece of toast and, a cup of coffee and I'm good to go. Or I go home at night, I'm just going to grab a pizza. There's not a lot of protein in that. Most of us are protein deficient. We're very, very low levels, and there's ways of finding that out and how to fix that. But if your protein level's low and you go a long period of time without eating anything or enough protein, or maybe you're going to have that cookie and before you go to bed, or that dish of ice cream, or whatever it is that you're craving before you go to bed, because you already know that your body knows that it's not being fed well, you're going to wake up, guaranteed. So you eat dinner at 5:30, 7:30, and then you go to bed at 11:30, 12 o'clock, and you're up at 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock. You're wide awake. That cortisol is supposed to spike in the morning and wake you up and say, hey, it's time to get up. It's time to get a little exercise. It's time to then eat and feed yourself. But we're getting it interpreted too early, and that's always a cortisol spike. So why is that a problem? Because there are other hormones that are associated with that. So if we watch the pathway on adrenal stress patterns, what should take place is this. We have one area that goes into something called pregnenolone. That's the precursor, the first step before you go into something called progesterone. And then we have another pathway that goes down and produces something called DHEA. That DHEA is the mother of all hormone, particularly in the next step, DHEAS. And that produces your initial stages of what? Testosterone, then the bad testosterone, and that's your DHT. Men and women, you both have to have it. But here's the problem. Under that testosterone that is normally there, that you have to produce, that all of us need at different levels. Ladies, you got to have testosterone too. But it then produces estrogens. See, once you go into menopause, you don't produce the estrogens, the progesterones, ladies, that you did from your ovaries. You produce it from your testosterone derivative in the adrenal system. So they get pushed down, right? So here's the deal. If you can't make that conversion the way it's supposed to, you may produce bad estrogens, or you may produce too much testosterone going into bad testosterone, DHT. But if it goes into cortisol instead, because you're constantly in sympathetic overdrive, fight, flight, the tiger's chasing you, you're trying to protect yourself, none of that stuff is taking place, and particularly in balance. But particularly it spares the progesterone. And you have to have progesterone to balance all this stuff. If your estrogen levels are too high, not too high as it's way out of kilter, but it's too high compared to the progesterone that should be buffered. Guys, this goes for you too, by the way. Then guess what happens? Estrogens are hydrophilic. They're water loving. They want to pull in liquid. And that tire that you got around your belly, and it doesn't seem to be anyplace else. You got a skinny butt, comparatively, but your belly is like overfull. That's an unblunted estrogen effect. It's a cortisol weight. That's where it comes from. And there's ways of buffering that, but you can't feed your body the wrong stuff, because then your body's going to identify that as a stress, and you go into that problem. And here's the other thing. You're going to go into an insulin trigger to begin with, because your body's trying to move this stuff around, but then pretty soon it crashes. And when insulin goes down, the first stage, because of the inflammation, the inflammatory barrier, you can have a resistance pattern. It can't transport in. But then what happens? In the next stage, you're not going to produce enough of it because it's overworked, it's tired. And you're burning up all the nutrition, the chromium and the zinc and the B complex, things that you have to buffer those things and make sure that you have enough insulin and you keep the inflammatory levels down. Now, I'm here to tell you that this can be reversed. You can change this whole craziness, but you have to be willing to make some changes. And you have to understand the mechanism. Nobody wants to do it just because your doctor told you to do it. You need to understand why. So that's the reason that I'm doing this. I want you to understand why. So let's walk through the triggering mechanism of some of these hormones that are causing the problem, right? So let's say, for example, that the adrenal glands have to have a trigger from the pituitary, right? It does. And it's called adrenal cortical stimulating hormone, or ACTH. But you had a trauma. We talked about it last week and the last few weeks. You had a trauma to the head. Now, that adrenal cortical stimulating hormone is at first probably going to be hyperactive for a short period of time because you're in a defense mode, fight, flight. Then pretty soon, it's not going to produce what it needs to produce because that fight-flight reaction now has lowered itself and it's not working the way it's supposed to. Well, when it does that, all the hormones go down the toilet. Now, if you're in that perimenopause state, before you get into menopause, guys, pay attention. This is you too. In the perimenopause state, then these things are really dependent. The hormone balance is dependent on everything we're talking about right now. That triggering mechanism from the pituitary into that adrenal reaction, the adrenal reaction trying to protect you. So when you're running from the tiger, you're trying to protect yourself. You're afraid what's out there. You're all angry. You're pissed off because of all the talking heads. That fight-flight reaction, that cortisol reaction, is out of balance. And you're starting to see all these other things take place. Diabetic situations start arising and say, well, I eat pretty good. I'm not eating badly. And it's because of that stress pattern. You have to balance the stress pattern. Sometimes it's as simple as making sure you're getting enough buffering vitamins, but ones that are absorbable and available. Sometimes it's a matter of finding out which inflammatory things that your body is sensitive to, not somebody else's. Now, remember that on the 16th of November, I will go through with Dr. Stephanie Pina, who will be my co-presenter. Stephanie is a doctor of naturopathic medicine, and we're going to kind of go back and forth on hormonal dysfunction, but more importantly, the fix and how we can actually do something about it, but how you can do something about it. And that's the important piece. So I want you to check something out. I want you to ask yourself some questions. Do you wake up in the middle of the night? Okay, if the answer is yes, and you're doing it all the time, I promise you your cortisol spiking. Secondly, do you have a hard time falling asleep? If the answer is yes to that, you're not going into a low cortisol pattern, it's staying high. And then the other question is, when you get up in the morning, are you ready to rock and roll and get started? Or does it take you a while to hatch? Meaning it's like, give me a half hour to an hour and I'll be ready to go. You can't just get up, let's go, I'm ready to go, let's take on the day. If that's not you, then your cortisol's crashing in the morning and it's not producing the levels of things that you need. It's important that you understand that. And if you're craving something, for example, here's the thing. If I said, do you crave chips, corn chips or potato chips or something like that? And you say, oh my God, yes, I love chips. And I said, so it's one of these foods that if you put in front of you, you can't stop eating. And I said, yeah, it'd be a good thing if they weren't there. I said, okay, here's the next question. If I just gave you the chips, but there were no salt on the chips, would you still want them? And the majority of people look at you and say, no, I won't want them. Why? It's the salt that you're craving, which means that the adrenal system, the fight-flight system, is not working the way it's supposed to. It's the salt that you want. And the other piece is the fat. It's the fatty things that you want. So salt and fat. Now, carbohydrate cravings are a whole different story, but they still add to this. And that's just a different pathway around the puzzle. So we have to understand that we're dealing with a lot of different pieces that we just don't understand. And I'm trying to get you to understand it, so you really get what needs to be done and how you can fix this thing, because it is fixable, by the way. It's very doable. But the problem is nobody's telling you that. And guess you know how much money is being made on over fat today? Huge dollars. You see all these guys now, they have medication out there again that is going to lower your fat and let you lose weight and so forth. But what happens is you're going to burn up that system pretty quickly. And then now you're going to go into other situations. Look up the side effects in several different things of Ozempic. And I dare you to do that, because what you're going to find is that there's a problem here. Major, major, major problem. And that they're setting the stage for other conditions and things that, guess what, can kill you. So we need to talk about what this is all about, balance the hormones out the way they're supposed to be. So here's the deal. Estrogen in regular exercise influences a lot of different pathways. So if you exercise properly at low levels, ongoing, your estrogen levels are going to have an opportunity to trigger and signal properly, providing that progesterone is balanced. Again, progesterone comes from where? If you're in menopause and perimenopause, it's going to come from your adrenal glands. It's not coming from your ovaries, ladies, because you're not producing ovulation anymore. Now, if it's before that, you may have a problem with your pituitary, and because of the cranial plates not working, or injury that you may have had to the back of the head, and that's going to cause a problem as well. But that's a whole different program we could talk about for all day long. But regular exercise will influence your hormonal health. It doesn't take a lot. What do I mean by regular exercise? Once a week, twice a week? No, what I'm talking about is about 4 times a week. You can work out in at least every other day. And I mean Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday, and then next week, Tuesday, Thursday, and so every other day. But you should be doing at least 4, 5 is even better, and you don't have to do a lot, but you have to do something. Okay, you have to maintain decent weight. Now, we're talking about watching what you're eating at this point. We're talking about getting rid of the trans fats. We're talking about making sure your protein levels are up adequately, high enough. And here's the thing that I'll encourage you to do. The scale is not your friend, even if you're in great health. The tape measure is. The scale, unless it shows you the amount of fat that's in your body, and we do that, by the way. We have a unit that when patients come into our nutrition department, within the first 2 visits, they put them on the scale and they measure the caloric burn, they measure the amount of body fat, the amount of water, the bone density, and so forth. So we have something that we can use as a prognostic indicator, but also as a measurer to find out how we're doing along the path. So you want to maintain a decent body fat composition. I don't like the thought process about weight. I really don't. It really doesn't have. When I was in school years ago and I was playing ball at Kent State University, those poor guys are getting hammered this year. I don't even want to acknowledge that I played there, but nevertheless, I did. And I was in amazing shape. I had body fat between 9 and 10%. I weighed something in the neighborhood of a 225 off season. But it was the exercise and obviously training table. We ate pretty well. And I came from a family, an immigrant family that demanded that we ate natural foods. And they used to call American foods junk. Well, guess what? I kind of bought into that as time went on. So you want to eat well and you want to get exercise. So you also want to make sure that your gut health is good. And that makes sure that the microbiome, those of us who have a bad intestinal microbiome, are going to put weight on because your inflammatory levels are going to be way high, and you're going to suppress the majority of what's called neurotransmitters. Those things like, serotonin and dopamine and GABA and gamete and so forth. All those guys are necessary for you to maintain healthy environment and production of all kinds of hormones. But if that gut microbiome is not good, meaning the good bacteria that's there, that whole mechanism, that whole platform shifts, and now it works against you. It doesn't work for you, and that's the bloatedness and so forth. And then pretty soon your body tries to buffer it and handles it. Consider eating my way, right? Clean. 90-10 rule. 90% of the time, I really eat well. 10% of the time, yeah, I screw it up like everybody else, but it's on an occasion. And then I'm really careful after that. And then I go back to that 90% rule. Eat organic when you can. Eat food without pesticides. The stuff that you get in the stores today are sprayed and adulterated and inundated with all kinds of things. Do the best you can. Fresh is better. Frozen is second. And you want to make sure that you're not eating adulterated meats. When you go in, you grab, something fast and you put it between 2 pieces of bread. That's not food. But a Mediterranean diet, and a Mediterranean diet is not pasta and pizza, people. I'm first generation Sicilian in this country. Let me tell you what it is. It's eating clean meats. It's eating vegetables. It's eating homemade products, but are made with good things. My grandmother made 10 pounds of bread every Saturday morning, but it was the old semolina flour. And you could see the yellowness, to it. And that wasn't the mainstay of the meal. It wasn't every night that we sat down there and pizza. It was every night we had a salad, we had vegetables, and so that's how I eat today. We eat protein, we eat 1 to 2 vegetables with the meal, and then we have a salad at the end of it. That occasionally we'll have some black rice, a little bit, or we'll have a small sweet potato or something of that nature. That's how you're meant to eat, and you keep things under control as they're meant to be kept under control. So when you're talking about the hormone pattern, insulin, for example, that's made by your pancreas. The adrenal glands that we've been talking about stimulate the pancreas to do what they're supposed to be doing. It says release insulin. But we also, because the cortisol levels are supposed to drop the inflammatory reaction, but in overdrive, they can cause what they're trying to stop. So when you hear insulin resistance, the insulin is resistant for a couple reasons. One, there's an inflammatory barrier that it can't penetrate through, or it doesn't have the right nutrients to help metabolize and transport the blood sugar. We talked about chromium. We talk about B complex. We talk about zinc. The majority of you are zinc deficient. One of the tests that we do with all of our patients when we see them is we do a zinc tally test. We put zinc sulfate in their mouth, a few drops, and you should be able to taste it. You know what zinc tastes like? Dry, metallic, and kind of, it goes like that, right? But guess what? It's good for you, but that's just the way it tastes. If you can't taste it, your zinc level is very low. You should taste it immediately. If you taste it, 10 seconds later, your zinc levels are low. If you can't taste it at all, your zinc levels are really low. And you need zinc to break down inflammatory reactions. You need zinc to transport insulin. You need zinc to help transport blood sugar and so forth. So it's really, really important. So we talked about your sleep habits and so forth. Omega fatty acids, your omega-3s is what you're talking about. And those are critical. And you get those by eating more, fish and seeds and plant oils and things of that nature. But in plant oils, I'm talking about what? Olive oil, and avocado oil and coconut oil. That's it. Stop there. The rest of it on a regular basis is something that's going to hurt your body. You don't want those in your system. And again, you want to maintain good chest to abdominal ratios. You don't want your stomach bigger than your chest, or even close to what it is. It should drop at least about 6-7 inches down to that area. If it's not doing that, there's a problem. You want to measure your thighs about 4 to 6 inches above the knee, in the same place all the time. You want to measure your chest and your shoulder girth, your neck, and so forth. Forget about the weight scale for the time being, because you'll make yourself crazy except for one time. You want to measure a percentage of body fat. Ladies, if you're in that menopause years and so forth, I would shoot for about 24 to 25% body fat. You're going to have more body fat than guys. Why? Because that's the way nature made you. That's the way God made you. You got to have a little extra fat potential in your pelvis, because that's how you kept children. Even though that you're not going to have them, you're still going to be a little higher than most. If you exercise on a regular basis, maybe 22 to 23%. That's a goal. 24%, that's good. Guys, you need to be no higher than about 16%, 15 to 60% body fat if you're exercising on a regular basis. But most of us weigh in and we get our body fat measured. We're in the 30s. Some of us are in the 40%. 40% of your weight is fat. That's not okay. And often that's nothing more than a result of hormone imbalance. So you need to do that. And then maybe, once a month, not every day, get off the damn scale, once a month, let's see what that body fat is doing. But then we got to find out, is there a problem with the skull? Is there an inflammatory reaction because you're in pain? Is that system in fight, flight because of whatever? And we're going to tie all those pieces together for you on the 16th November here at the Roselle Center for Healing. And we really want to give you that gift. We want to show you how to control that body fat that's sitting around your belly. It's not okay. If you have a big belly, you've got a lot of stress on your heart. If you got a big belly, you're causing other organ systems not to work. Now, as we go through the next few weeks, we're going to talk about hormones and this disruption that they have and what it really means. And is it predisposing to certain types of cancers? And, how do you know that? What can you do about it? Why are we going through such tough times in this country with andropause and menopause and perimenopause and any transition where the rest of the world doesn't do that? We do it here. Is it lifestyle? Well, I think that if you're really truthful with yourself, you would say, yeah, it has a lot to do with it. It really, it's really bad. And so we're going to go back and forth, and I'm going to show you different things. I'm going to give you certain tips. But how about if you did nothing more than this? I want to leave you with this. What if you decided that today, if you're at work and you're at a screen all the time, you're at home, you're on your phone, you're on your screen and so forth, that every 45 minutes, you're going to get up and you're going to walk for at least 100 yards. I don't care if it's around your house, and you go up and down the stairs a few times, And you're not going to turn the stupid tube on all day long. And you only allow yourself one rotation of the news cycle a day. Because guess what? Whatever you heard in the morning, you're going to hear. I watch it at nighttime once. And it's more of an economic news cycle than watching everybody else, because I want to take something and throw it at the television, and because they're all lying to you regardless. But I look at the economic news once. My wife won't let me watch any more than that anyway. So one news cycle. When you go to work, park your car at the end of the parking lot and walk up. And then if you have the shape, walk up at least one floor, and then take the elevator there. But then when you go home, walk down the stairs. At least do that. Walk down the stairs every 45 minutes. Get off from your desk. Go get a glass of water. Water. I didn't say coffee. I didn't say go get a soda. I didn't say go get a donut. I said go get some water. Get a glass of water every 45 minutes. So if you drank a cup of water every 45 minutes, or once an hour anyway, right, all day long, guess what? Now you're going to flush that lymphatic system. And you're going to also drop the inflammatory reactions that are going on. Just doing little things like that. And going back to what we talked about relative to not enough protein. Do this. You all have to have a minimum of about 75 grams, preferably about 100 grams of protein a day from all sources. If you get enough protein by itself, cleanly, not put in between two pieces of bread, not stuck as two meatballs on top of pasta, not talking about a pizza, which you think that the cheese is the protein, but some clean protein, some fish, some meat, some baked chicken, some baked turkey, lentils, some nuts and seeds, not nuts that are loaded with oil and they're in a package and so forth. Go get some fresh nuts and eat about a quarter of a cup a day. Let's do it this way. 4 ounces of any sort of meat, fish, turkey, whatever, is 27 grams of protein. An egg is 7. Do your math. Get at least 75 grams. And here's the other piece. Don't eat anything for 12 hours. You have your dinner, except now if you're waking up with that cortisol spike, we're going to change that a little bit because we want you to get a little protein before you go to bed. Eat a hard-boiled egg before you go to bed. Eat about an ounce or 2 of some sort of meat before you go to bed. And I'm talking about an hour before. You do that within a week's time, I think you're going to see a change. And if you do it long enough, you're going to see a shift in how you feel. And we're going to blunt that down. But we've got to get those progesterone levels balanced if your hormones are ever going to regulate. And we're going to talk about that as we go through. Listen, you can do this. You can make a huge difference in how your body reacts to virtually everything. But we're talking about your hormones. We're talking about your thyroid hormone. We're going to get into it. We're going to do a whole program on thyroid and what that really means. So watch this stay tuned. And by the way, I want you to make sure that you tell people about this program, Ageless Health, with me, with Dr. Tom Roselle. Follow me and like me on anything that you see or find me at. Why? Because I can get this information out to so many more people. Go to our Ageless Health store on drtomroselle.com. There's a ton of things in there that are good for you products. Make it happen. And remember, I'll be here on an ongoing basis until, I'm not here. And hopefully that'll be for a long time yet, for one reason only. You deserve the information. But more importantly, I love you all. See you next week. Bye.